a series of 4 New Years. So Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year, but the first month, or the first, the first month on the Jewish calendar is actually the month that Passover's in. So just like we have a fiscal New Year and the secular New Year and Rosh Hashanah, there's these 4 different New Years in Talmud. So that's, and then in medieval times, the Kabbalists, the Jewish mystics, took this holiday or this festival and kind of enhanced it with mystical ideas. And that's when, if people have ever been to a Bishvat Seder, that's a mystical tradition that came much later than Torah or Talmud, and sort of put all these symbolic things connected to the fruits that we eat from trees. So we can talk about what that looks like. And then I would say in modern and contemporary times, there's sort of 2 sides it's been used, is the planting of trees in Israel with the establishment of the state, of making the desert green, which now we know is like complicated in many ways. Both, like when I lived in Israel in a kibbutz in the desert, I kind of looked around, I'm like, wait, maybe we're not supposed to make the desert green, there's like a water issue and all these things. But that was, Tu B'Shvat became a big holiday because of that. And then also it's become sort of Jewish Environmental Day, Jewish Earth Day. So lots of stuff around, taking care of the earth because it's this New Year of the trees. So I have some text to share, but any questions on that, like what Tu B'Shvat is and where it comes from? Okay. Okay, first what I want to do is share my screen, hopefully. First, we're going to say a blessing. I don't know if I can't remember if I've been doing this, but I think we should do it. So we're going to start doing it. Is when we study Torah together, there's a blessing for studying Torah. So those of you who feel comfortable can join me in this prayer right here, because studying Torah is different, or our tradition says it's different than studying about fungus and trees, that there's a holiness in studying these texts that we say a blessing for. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, our God, ruler of the universe, who has made us holy with your commandments and commanded us to busy or occupy ourselves with Torah. So we're getting busy. And then I want to, So the text I'm about to, now you see that, right? You see my new, there we go. So the way, and this is maybe a particularly Reconstructionist approach that I was trained as a Reconstructionist rabbi, is to look at texts through a historical lens. So Jewish tradition develops over time and can be split into different periods. And so I thought what might be interesting is to look at some of these texts and ideas as they develop through time. So first I'm going to look at one text in 3 different time periods, how it's used, and then go back and just share some texts about the centrality of trees and the spirituality of trees in Jewish tradition as a setup for all the learning on trees that is coming in the next few weeks, and as maybe a way to move through this time when there's so much upheaval, to think about trees as a place to center us sometimes. Maybe a little less upheaval today than yesterday, but you never know. So I wanted to start with this Deuteronomy text right here. I think I can make it bigger. Okay. So Deuteronomy 19 is a very famous text that a lot of people use on Tu B'Shvat. Is there someone who'd be willing to read it when in your war against a city? If you don't volunteer, I'll call it.
I can read.
Okay.
Let the heavens rejoice. What?
Second, we're skipping the first text. Go to the second text.
Second paragraph?
Paragraph, sorry. Yeah, second paragraph.
Starting with when?
Yeah.
Yes.
When in your war against a city, you have to besiege it a long time in order to capture it. You must not destroy its trees. wielding the axe against them. You may eat of them, but you must not cut them down. Are trees of the field human to withdraw before you into the besieged city? Only trees that you know do not yield food may be destroyed. You may cut them down for constructing siege works against the city that is waging war on you until it has been reduced.
Okay, so that's quite a text about war and trees. Any questions or comments? The big question that the rabbis connect to here is, what does it mean, are the trees of the field human?
Yeah, I was wondering that too.
Right. So we're going to look at like, whoa, what does that mean? And there's tremendous amount of writing on, just that. So the rabbis, when something's confusing in the text and it could be read in different ways, they like to bring it forth. Another thing though about that is that this idea that you're in a war, but you still care about the trees feels like, to me, it says a few things. First of all, it reminds us in our contemporary time how environmentally destructive war is. We often think of human lives, which of course is crucial, but it's also very environmentally destructive, and that's put out here. And that also that the trees are so important that you don't just go cutting them down in order to win a war. And then this idea of the fruit trees, and that's where I want to look a little bit before we go to the human of the field, is this idea of the special importance of fruit trees. I guess it doesn't say trees that yield food, but I think of that as so. Oh, here we go. I love this one. So Rabbi, can someone read right here where my cursor is? So that was Bible, that was Torah, Deuteronomy, right? And then rabbinic texts of the Talmud come around the time of, the Mishnah comes around the time of Jesus, so the beginning of this, the Common Era, and is written after the exile. Although this is the Jerusalem Talmud that we're reading from, which was written in the land of Israel. But okay, who wants to read about fruit trees?
I'll read.
Okay.
Rabbi Ababani said, in the next world, a person will be judged for all the fine fruit that he saw but did not eat.
So I just find that amazing that there's a sin for, not only can you not cut down the fruit tree, but Dafka, if you see it and you don't eat it, then that's like a sin in of itself, which I know too many people in California who have fruit trees who do that all the time. So they should read this text. And so there's a special connection to fruit trees in particular. And I don't know why, besides that, people needed food, why that is, but let's see. And now I'm going to skip medieval and we're going to go to modern. So when we talk about the modern period, we're talking about like Enlightenment, like maybe 1800s kind of. And this is, I think, a perfect text for us in Wisconsin. So much of Tu Bishvat is about that the sap is beginning to rise, the almond tree, there's a song about almond trees beginning to bloom. I'm always trying to find a fresh pomegranate to buy for Tu Bishvat in Wisconsin on Tu Bishvat, and it's really hard to relate to. So here's our winter tree text that also connects to the person is like a tree of the field. So this is a long one. I see Roz on my screen, so I'm going to invite you to read it.
I'd be happy to, thank you. There is a lesson hinted at by Tu Bishvat for a person is like a tree of the field.
So wait, so when I said text through time, right? So this Hasidic rabbi took that little line from Deuteronomy and now is going to write this whole thing. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. When the wheel of fortune has turned for someone and he is down, when he sees no way to keep his head above water, he has lost all hope and is despairing. Then he should ponder a tree in winter. Its leaves have fallen, Its moisture has dried up. It is almost a dead stump in the ground. Then suddenly it begins to revive and to draw moisture from the earth. Slowly it blossoms, then brings forth fruits. A person should learn from this not to despair, but to take hope and have courage, for he too is like a tree. We can learn from the trees about divine service. During the cold days of winter, they wither and shed their leaves. Yet, they then gather strength and their sap begins to flow within them, so that they can grow and sprout with new life and their leaves can be used for healing. So, although a person's soul feels dry and withered, let him gather and store up Torah and mitzvot, and with God's help, he will spiritually revive. Oh, I like that.
Yeah, tell me what you like about him.
There are always times when you feel kind of down and, nobody likes me, the world's a terrible place. But, in my mind, I always think, okay, but it's going to be better tomorrow, it's going to be better. And it's nice to kind of see another version of that, even when things look bad, just wait a little bit and they'll be better.
So, yeah, and as I said, my experience of it is I remember I didn't grow up in the winter. So I don't know if I intellectually thought trees were dead, in this weather. But I remember the first time I was in winter on the East Coast and I split a stick in half and it was green on the inside. I mean, I know probably my science brain knew that, but it was somehow amazing to me that the green is on the inside, even though it looks dead on the outside. So I kind of think that goes with this, this passage.
It sort of reminds me that there are bushes that are around in winter that have red berries in winter.
Yeah.
To remind you that, they're still alive,
Right. And that things are happening on the inside. We can, when it says like a tree is, a person is like a tree, that like often there's a lot going on inside of us or inside of other people that we don't see. And if you think about the sap in a tree or the winter tree, building up that sap, so much is going on that we don't see, that, there's so much more going on than the leaves and the flowers. And so I think it's, that's another way that trees remind us of that. And I think this is a particularly maybe helpful text as we move through this COVID winter. So what do you think, Paul, as the person who's out looking at trees in the winter?
Well, I think what you said is kind of interesting too, because the trees are actually keeping track of the winter. And the reason we know that is because they develop buds before the winter starts. And those buds contain usually either leaves or flowers for the next year, but they're protected inside that bud.
Huh.
But to know when it's time to break the bud is not to be fooled by a sudden warm day in the middle of February, but to count a certain number of days when it's cold enough to know that the winter has gone through and that it's ready to bud again. And so, the tree is kind of keeping track of moisture, of sunlight, the number of days that it's under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and all kinds of things are still happening in the tree that you won't see, but are still happening. And that could be a definite, analogy to any living thing, probably, including humans. So there's lots of interesting ways I think you can philosophize and parallel between forms of life.
Right, between us. Like, I have felt during COVID, like, oh, life didn't actually stop. Like, I see my nieces and nephews on Zoom and I'm like, oh, they grew a lot, or this changed, or, I mean, that's the good changes, but a lot, life has still been moving on. And I mean, it's a similar thing as we all hermit inside. Yep. Leslie.
I thought the line, let him gather and store up Torah and mitzvot, and with God's help, he will spiritually revive, was interesting, because what it says is that when your soul feels dry and withered, you should, if you do mitzvot and study, and I'm implying that that leads to connection with other people and with things greater than yourself, that you will spiritually revive.
Yeah. Right. And that we have to sort of do that, just like the tree maybe needs certain things in order to rebloom, including the cold, right? To be healthy. I mean, that's another interesting piece somehow. Maybe this isn't related, but I also find it to be a miracle. Like my scientist father doesn't like when I say this, but those bulbs you plant in November that come up in the spring, I just find it to be just amazing. And that they're brighter in places where they get colder in the winter. But those bulbs like use the cold to become, or whatever, like they're cold, the cold makes them better. And so maybe that's another lesson, is that these sort of times of spiritual withering, we don't want them and we don't hope them on anyone, but maybe there's color that comes out, you know? So, thank you. So the next set of, so I put that one especially in there for our winter climate, because so many Tu Bishvat texts don't quite speak to where we're at. But I want to go back and I like to just show that's like a really small example, but the sort of use of Torah texts to change meaning throughout the tradition happens a lot. And I wanted to just share some texts that I find uplifting, both just in and of themselves, but also as we, you know, contemplate and live through climate change and think about what we can do and how important that, you know, connection to the natural world is, and paying attention. It feels like that's a really old commandment, that is part of what Torah teaches us, even though I think often Jewish life is not always nature connected, contemporary Jewish life, but it's here. So, and we could do a whole thing on Judaism and environmentalism, but for now, these texts are both about the importance of trees, but also trees as kind of spiritual healers or spiritual uplifters. So anyways, Psalms, also Bible, comes after Torah in the writings. Can you see the whole text when I share my screen like this? Can you see this, or do you see I always get confused.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, cool. Okay, who wants to read some Psalms? How about we just go around? Jay, do you want to read some Psalms for us?
Okay. Let the heavens rejoice and the earth exult. Let the sea and all within it thunder, the fields and everything in them exult. Then shall all of forest trees shout for joy at the presence of the Eternal One, who is coming to rule the earth. God will rule the earth justly and its people in faithfulness.
So has anyone ever had a tree that they feel like is shouting for joy? Like, what does that mean? Let the trees shout for joy.
Maybe its foliage is very either brightly colored or has beautiful blossoms.
Yeah, yeah. Like those bright red trees in the fall.
Yeah, burning, I think they call them the burning bush.
Oh, do they?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, and this idea that there's not just humans who are praising, or, you know, that it's sort of like the whole creation is both connected and praying, I guess. So I like that about this.
I had another thought about
Yes.
leaving the fruit on the trees.
Yes,
that may or
please.
may not, I'm not that much of a science person, but birds, bees, and other insects are attracted to different trees, and it's a way of their preservation as well.
God, like that.
Yeah. So, and you're talking about this, the Deuteronomy piece of like, leave the fruit trees alone. That's interesting. Yeah.
So I don't know. There might be some connection.
Yeah. Or just, and like both that, the Deuteronomy text and the Psalm text just feels like it's like recognizing that it's all connected, that it's not like humans and everything else, but that they're all somehow interconnected and that we have to pay attention. And now we know that. I mean, we've known that for a long time, but now we see it, right? When it's or weird weather and all that.
I was thinking about leaving the fruit and not cutting down the trees reminded me of some Native American stories about like going to harvest wild rice and not taking it all because you need to reseed for the next crop of that. And I don't know if this is a proper interpretation of it, but it seems like, you know, leaving some of the fruit to fall on the ground and leave its seeds and not cutting down trees or coming through a town and destroying the fruit trees that will feed you and others. You know, it seems like that same type of message that you have to realize that things are interconnected and that nature has its way of healing and providing.
That's interesting, Paul, because there's also the idea of like, don't reap all the way to the corners of your field in Leviticus, and you know, to leave the gleanings behind. And it says to leave it for the poor and the stranger to collect it. So it's sort of a safety net. But I wonder, you know, you could collect it and give it to the poor, but it says to leave it. So I wonder if there's some, I've never thought of the leaving it as an environmental thing. That's interesting. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna skip the long rabbinic one, although it's worth reading, but anyways, it's worth reading, but we're not gonna read it right now. Okay. Maybe we'll get back to it because it's not really about trees. It's about like taking care of the earth or taking care of the world. But I like these two, and the second one might be a little more familiar, but Karen, do you want to read Shimon Bar Yochai?
Sure. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai said, 3 things are of equal importance: earth, humans, and rain. Rabbi Levi ben Hayata said, this is to teach that without earth there is no rain, and without rain the earth cannot endure, and without either humans cannot exist.
So I think for the rabbis to say that earth and humans and rain are all equal is really powerful, because I at least, you know, come from a Judaism where, you know, humans sort of are at the top of the heap. Or maybe that's just our American culture. I don't know. But
well, I think that a lot of these texts, and typically at Tu Bishvat, texts that people choose to teach around Tu Bishvat, show us a number of things. One, that, you know, without the scientific knowledge that we have today, the rabbis still had an awareness and actually a deep understanding of the interdependency of all life on, you know, on the individual species. But the other thing that I always find, for me, is always very fascinating and also comforting to a certain degree, being someone who originally was a rural person, that as a people, we Jews were very rural and very agricultural, you know, until relatively recently in our history. Right. So we as a people had a real connection to nature that perhaps we've lost to some degree by becoming predominantly urban people.
Yeah.
So it just the whole arc of history is, I see that in these texts every time I look at them. You know?
Yeah, I agree that like there's a lot of earth connection in the religion, but even if we don't do it that much, or we don't live that way enough now, but
Right.
yeah. And also I'm always conscious of the rain as the example. Like, I imagine this is a tradition that started in a desert land. So I always wonder that, like, fruit trees maybe have a higher value in a place than maybe we put on them when there is so much abundance of that kind of life. And also just the importance of rain. We have rain in our prayers, and we have a special, we add rain in our prayers in the fall, and that's because rain has, it's not like here where there's a lot of rain all the time, or during the rainy season. The rain has such a precious commodity, because it could say without sun, without I don't know, without but rain is central. So
Karen, I like your perspective that long before history had its due, there were people who were aware of that, and I never had, even if I'd seen these statements before, which I don't remember doing, so it didn't click that, this was a long before, our current environmental concerns.
Yeah. Well, and and those of us who have spent time studying the mystical tradition in Judaism, it's just full of reverence for nature. And the rabbis would go, out into the woods, and or there's myth about the rabbis going out into the woods and communing with the trees, as I think part of prayer. So it's really, there really is a real core, a connection to nature. I think is very crucial and core to Judaism.
And it's interesting, like this idea that like before science knew it, it's almost as if they lived that truth more than having like, some kind of like intellectual knowing of it. There's places in the Talmud where they talk about pregnancy, and they split pregnancy into 3 periods of pregnancy. And I remember when I saw that, I was like, wait, how did they know that? Like, and so it's just a really interesting, it's interesting how they knew so much more about the body and about nature, and maybe not exactly the way we know it now, but it almost feels like, because we've lost the being in tune to it, and but they knew it. So
well, I think we have so many other distractions,
right,
that we aren't necessarily in the, I hate to use the term present, but not, if you've taken yoga, they say, okay, close your eyes, feel what's going on, and otherwise you're busy doing things and you don't listen to yourself, so to speak.
Right. Yeah.
Well, the other thing is that, prior to becoming a more urban people, we moved away from being agricultural. And when your community is predominantly an agricultural community, it's you have to learn things by observation. For example, the what we call the trimesters of pregnancy. I mean, someone who's on a farm has to know that, even if they don't know it scientifically, in terms of dealing with their animals, with the new, knowing when to be ready for the new calves or the new baby goats, or all of those kinds of things. So it's because of, it's a knowledge that comes from having both a very direct relationship with these things, but also it's a question of survival. I mean, if you don't learn it from, if you don't pay attention to what's happening to your animals and your plants, that you are dependent on for survival, you're not going to survive. So But what's so wonderful about Judaism is that the rabbis and other people wrote so beautifully about the observations that they were living and making in these, in these texts.
Yeah, so Reed, before we move on to medieval, this one I love, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Will you read that, Karen? Yeah.
Yeah, Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai used to say, if you have a sapling in your hand and someone should say to you that the Mashiach has come, stay and complete the planting and then go to greet the Mashiach.
Yeah.
That's very quite well known.
Yeah, that's very well known.
And it's a beautiful text.
It's just so powerful to think that, like, when we think about needing to care for the earth, it's like, even when the Messiah comes, this is what you should be doing. You should be planting the tree, and there's other texts about, like, you're going to plant the tree, but you're not going to eat the fruit of it because you're planting it for the next generation. So, and the going to pray in the fields that Karen talked about, I think I have here, wait. Yeah, but okay, in a minute. Okay, so I think I want someone to read these two. I'm pointing, like you can see me pointing. This one and this one. Leslie, do you want to read whenever I turn my eyes? Oh, you're on mute.
Sure. I didn't see where you were pointing. Were you pointing?
Yeah,
at
right here. I know.
Ones?
There's
or the one that starts with whenever. Okay. Whenever I turn my eyes around on earth or to the heavens, I see you in the field of stars. I see you in the yield of the land, in every breath and sound, a blade of grass, a simple flower, an echo of your holy name.
So, sort of God as, so many people have told me, and we all know, like, I don't find God in the synagogue or in the prayers, but when I'm on the top of a mountain, that's when I feel connected. And this kind of speaks to that in a really clear way, that's when I hear the echo of God's name, is when I look into nature. So this isn't exactly about trees, but it kind of speaks to the spirituality that we find in nature, and that's, inherent in, that's not separate from Judaism, I guess, which I think we often think as like, oh, well, the only place that really a Jewish God is in Torah or in prayer or in synagogue. So, and I suspect many of us have had that sense.
But isn't that partly because it's all reflecting God's creation?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think so. So either that's kind of like the Torah answer, or that's a sort of natural human place to feel connected to something larger than us. Like maybe it's not a new feeling, that's where we find God. I know that, like, since it's been winter, it's easy to not leave the house with coronavirus in winter. And I just notice how grumpy I get if I don't take a walk or spend time outside. It's not just about the exercise. It's about, like, being in, in the natural environment. So I just think it speaks to our truth. And then read the next one, Leslie.
Rabbi Shimon said, "The shade spread over us by these trees is so pleasant. We must crown this place with words of Torah."
So almost like the shade of a tree is a holy spot, right? So same kind of thing, like, yeah. So, I mean, what do people think about that, about finding spirituality out in nature, or that, Torah and Torah is found in the trees?
I think that it's kind of circular in the sense that I think that being outside and being in the trees, it's physically healing and well, and feeling the sun or just feeling the air. And then I think it feels spiritual because it feels well. And then I think it feels well because it feels spiritual.
Mm.
And I think that it's all very interconnected. And so, yeah.
That's interesting. I like that. Right, like which comes first? Is it spiritual because it makes us feel good, or does it make us feel good because it's yeah, I like that.
And what is spirituality then? Is it just wellness? Is like, if we feel well, do we feel a connection to God or something bigger than us, and our deeper selves? And then if you put in a deep breath into the mix, it's like it all, it all becomes very interdependent. And yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting.
It
So,
speaks to me, and if you've seen my backdrops before, I have a lot of them that are out in nature, whether it's a rainbow or some cardinals or whatever, because I feel more connected that way than being in a building, especially now that we're home a lot. Like you said, Rabbi, you just want to get out. You just want to be with the things that God created,
Right.
But there's still, in spite of everything, there's still beauty in the world.
Right. That's what Anne Frank, there's a beautiful quote from Anne Frank about, in spite of everything, there's still beauty in the world.
Mhm.
I did notice that yesterday was the first sunny day in many weeks, and that seemed like appropriate. Okay, there was one more here it is. Here's the thing Karen was talking about. Okay. Well, either Nachman of Bratslav or, well, let's do Martin Buber because this is so nice. Okay. Jay, do you want to read Martin Buber right here? I can contemplate a tree.
I can contemplate a tree. I can accept it as a picture. I can feel it as a movement. I can assign it to a species and observe it as an instant. I can overcome its uniqueness and form so rigorously that I can recognize it only as an expression of law. I can dissolve it into a number, into a pure relation between numbers, and externalize it. Throughout all of this, the tree remains my object and has its time span, its kind and condition. But it can also happen if will and grace are joined, that as I contemplate the tree, I am drawn into a relation, and the tree ceases to be an it.
Mhm.
This is like the prayer in the trees, like how do we become more, Martin Buber's all about like how I don't objectify something, but that when I commune with something, they become thou and not it. So how do we get to that place of, why I like this is that when we talk about the science, it's so easy to see everything. Like I can know why the bulbs come up in the spring that I planted in the fall, but that's an I-it relationship of sort of like all headspace. And this modern period of, the Nachman of Bratslav below is about praying out in the woods, like Karen talked about, and this kind of, that spirituality comes from being out there, but we also have to work at it a little bit, especially now where, we have such a science mind that we're taught about. So, okay, I want to do one more before we finish, and that, we started by saying that Tu Bishvat started as a day, sort of a tax day, an agricultural tax day, to measure the years of a tree and its fruit. And so I like this combination of spirituality and the tax code or whatever. So let's see, who wants to read that? Maybe Paul should read one more.
Okay. On Tu Bishvat, when spring comes, an angel descends, ledger in hand, and enters each bud, each twig, each tree, and all our garden flowers. From town to town, from village to village, the angel makes a winged way, searching the valleys, inspecting the hills, flying over the desert, and returns to heaven. And when the ledger will be full of trees and blossoms and shrubs, when the desert is turned into a meadow, and all our land a watered garden, the Messiah will appear.
So this is kind of both the, there's an angel here, there's the counting of everything, which is the sort of tax piece, or the that Tu B'Shvat started with, and then there's sort of the Zionist piece of the desert turning into the meadow, which is clearly like comes from the earth. That was the Zionist, one of the Zionist projects. So, but I think I love imagining having a tax ledger that's filled with blossoms and trees. And maybe they mean written, but I imagine like a ledger that actually has buds and blossoms and trees. So I wanted to leave that with you and ask if anybody, and since we have a couple minutes left, I wanted to see if anybody has any memories or traditions of celebrating Tu B'Shvat that you want to share with other people, because I think it's something a lot of people don't do, haven't done. Let's see. Trying to stop sharing my screen.
So look down.
Yeah.
It's either on the very, I think it's on the top.
Yeah, there we go. I got it. Okay. Does anyone celebrate Tu B'Shvat?
I can't think of any time that we did.
So, Karen, do you? So,
I haven't for a while, but when I was, still over at Shaarei Shemayim, we often had someone would put together a Tu B'Shvat Seder, and the tasting of fruits, and particularly if someone would get fruits that are native to the land of Israel, with dates and, as you said, pomegranates and those kinds of things. It was always a little challenging to get into the spirit, the kavanah, because we were in Madison, Wisconsin, and oftentimes it was sub-zero weather. I guess the one thing that I want to maybe mention as being probably the most significant Tu B'Shvat that I spent, and there was not a Seder that I recall, but the first time that I went to Israel was around the time of Tu B'Shvat, and it was a project of Rabbi Arthur Waskow of tree planting with the Palestinians in the West Bank.
Yeah.
And so we went in every day into the West Bank, and during that time of Tu B'Shvat, we planted olive trees to actually replace the trees that had been destroyed. I don't want to bring us down into a negative place here, so I'm not going to go any farther with that part of it. But it was very memorable, and that was many, many, many years ago, and it's still vivid. I still can feel the soil in my hands. Yeah.
And I want to say something about the Seder if other people haven't done it. I mean, it's something, there's, you can add prayers, but why I think it's something, even though it's hard to relate to the fruit growing, is there's a whole order of the fruit that's from the mystical tradition of, like, first you eat something that's hard. I think it's this order: hard on the outside but soft on the inside. Something like a banana or a pomegranate, where you can't eat the outside but you can eat the inside. Some more thing that you can eat the outside but there's a pit on the inside. And then something you can eat the whole thing, like a fig. And kind of thinking about how that's like a tree is like a human, right? Like the person who's hard on the outside but soft on the inside, and that kind of thing. And then it goes through also the Kabbalistic idea of different levels of reality. And so each of those fruits are connected to levels of reality until the last one where there's no fruit because we're sort of beyond the physical. And then with each of the fruits is a cup of wine. Maybe we'll have to do this, Paul, once we can all be together. I know Paul told me to get the fruit and show it, but it felt so depressing to like be filling my glass, and I don't know. We'll be able to, next to Bishvat, we'll share fruit. But where you take the, you have red wine and white wine or grape juice, red and white, and that each cup, you have 4 cups that represent the seasons. So white is the winter, and then you have the spring with a little blush, and then the summer that's deeper red, and the fall that's all red. And so it's kind of a nice, I do that. That's mostly what I do, is do that, at dinner that night. And you can also plant, I haven't succeeded hugely with this task, but I think last year we did. You can plant parsley seeds on Tu B'Shvat that will then have parsley for your Passover table. And we can do that inside. So,
Wow.
Yeah. And it works. It works and it's fun. Then you get to grow it. So.
At my kids' college, Hillel passed them all out parsley to grow.
Yes.
During COVID in their dorm rooms too.
Oh.
So it's very.
Wait, but not now or related to Tu B'Shvat?
I don't know. They got parsley and they're growing it for Pesach.
So usually, yeah. So same thing. Yeah.
So I just found a description of a Tu B'Shvat Seder, and I'll send it to you, Rabbi, if you want to send it out to people. It's really quite nice.
Yeah, and it's easy to do at home. There's not like a lot of sets of prayers. So yeah, we can send that one out or one. Yeah.
Or if you have another one.
Yeah, that's
I'm not
great.
attached to this. I just Googled it.
Yeah. And maybe next year, Paul, we'll have a Tu B'Shvat Seder.
Yeah, I think we should.
God willing.
Once this is over, there's going to be a lot of drinking, I think. I just, as a feeling that, because that seems to come up in every, a lot of Zoom discussions like, oh, we can't be together, but boy, when we do.
That's right. We're going to eat a lot.
So we'll be helping eating some of the fruit from the trees made into liquid form.
Yeah.
That's right.
Temple Bethel is having a Tu B'Shvat Seder.
Oh, they are?
Where everybody sets it on their own. That's nice. Yeah.
So,
Were you instructed to get certain dried fruits or anything?
I haven't registered for it.
Okay.
It's on Sunday, and I can't remember if I didn't sign up because it conflicted with my family's Zoom.
Mhm.
Yeah, I should be less down on the Zoom fruit, but anyways.
Well, let's make a commitment for next year to have a Tu B'Shvat Seder.
That'd be really fun.
That would be really fun, yeah.
And I almost forgot, let's say a blessing to end Torah study.
Okay.
Let's see. This is my, wrong. There we go. So let's see, it's hard to, let's read this one. So the traditional blessing to end Torah study is called Kaddish D'Rabbanan, and it's quite long and it's in Aramaic. So I like to use a contemporary reading, if I can move you guys over. Okay. So it is doesn't sound good, but I think it's nice to read together anyways. So a prayer to conclude Torah study. May our eyes sparkle with the light of Torah, and our ears hear the music of its words. And may the space between each letter of the scrolls bring warmth and comfort to our souls. May the syllables draw holiness from our hearts. And may this holiness be gentle and soothing to the world. And may our study be passionate and meanings bear more meanings. Until life itself arrays itself to us as a dazzling feast. And may our conversation, even of the commonplace, be a blessing to all who listen. And may they see the Torah glowing on our faces. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Renee.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's nice to be with you all, and stay safe and healthy. And
Thank you.
all right.
Take good care, everyone.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rabbi. And I'm
Thank
glad we had more people this week.
Yeah, we're gonna keep trying.
So, yeah. All right. Stay safe, stay warm, everybody.
Yes.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jay, so much.
I'm gonna lift the Martin Buber for my talk next week.
Okay, good.
Just because I think that that issue of being a part of it and not seeing it as an object, because we are part of the earth together, and so I think it will have a good message too.
Yeah, Paul, I didn't.
Two of
Go
those
ahead.
people, both started out as foresters. So two of these real prominent researchers who are into this fungal relationship with trees, both are speaking now as they've published their research and done all these scientific talks. Both of them have started doing some more spiritual related talks, and this woman even brings in some Native Americans because she lives in British Columbia, and so she wanted to talk about how Indian people had this reverence for trees and felt a part of all this connectedness before it was so-called scientifically proven. And
Right. So it totally goes with this. And this is your holiday. I don't know why I didn't think about it, but this is your holiday, Paul.
Yeah, it's a good one. And that, it reminded me too, I think that's probably the legacy maybe of this holiday, or inspiration of this holiday might have been the Levy series practice of dried fruits and nuts on the tables.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it was seen as a convenient, easy thing, but I think maybe it also came from using that at other holidays and events, that was something that was popular, that just turned out to be good for this event as well.
Yeah. Well, I should know this, but is Purim's not till March, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we should think of another February topic before Purim.
Yes, right. So no, you know what?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I thought, we had that. Did you see that thing that was sent out? It was Adama asking for us.
Yes, they're very into. Oh no, it's February 25th. Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So they wanted us to order Hamantash, and so it
All right.
would be appropriate to do something.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, let's do Purim. Okay, good. We have a topic.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm going to think of Purim, but okay, so we'll do Purim.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing. It's the week before,
Right.
right?
So that'll be good. Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Good. And Jay, thanks for coming. I
Oh,
appreciate
sure.
it.
It was a pleasure.
And reading.
Good.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to take a 5-minute break before my 4:45 Zoom. I'm going to
Okay.
go away from the screen for
Okay.
10 minutes.
And you think any time between 4:30 and 5 is okay to deliver a meal to Francie?
Yeah, I mean, I just made that up because that's around when Shabbos starts and the funeral's in the morning. So,
Isn't there something like at 3:30 or 4 from the temple?
oh, right. I didn't check that. But that's okay, I think. What time is that at? It must be before.
I thought it was right before
Right.
Shabbat.
No, you're right. So Herm, let's see. Wait 1 second. Jay, do you want to, we're going to talk about logistics of other things. Do you want to?
Yeah, okay. See you
Thanks.
later.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
See you on Monday.
I'm sorry, I just didn't want to talk about Francie. I talked to her daughter, or I texted with her daughter. No, 350. You're right. So, let's see. Let me see something. So 5 is safe, I think.
Yeah,
Because
350 the service.
yeah, but it won't. I mean, I'm looking right now. Beth Israel will end its thing, but what by the time Shabbat starts? So
Okay, so they'll end
so
right.
candle lighting is at like 4:39.
Okay.
So I think between 4:30 and 5 is.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, I'm not sure that they don't go. Well, maybe they've changed their. Yeah, or you can say 5.
Okay.
And maybe I should tell her. I'll ask her daughter to tell her.
Yeah.
So she doesn't make dinner.
Mm-hmm.
But thanks for doing that. I was just like sitting in the car.
He said
What?
you put it in something that could be reheated easy in the oven.
Okay,
And
Great.
we'll also bring her a challah.
right. So does he do the delivery?
No. Either I'll do it or somebody else will do it.
Okay.
But we have to pick it up before he leaves for the evening.
I mean, if you want to do it earlier in the day, I think, wait, she told me when the funeral is. It's at noon. So I think anytime after 1 or 2. Yeah. But we should get someone on the west side to do it. I don't want you.
You have to pick it up downtown, and I'm not working tomorrow, officially. So I'll probably just go for a walk sometime, like at the Arb or at Owen Park.
Okay.
So if I can't, deliver it to her, I'll pick it up and, I can drop it off at the office.
Christina's working. Do you want me to ask Christina to do it?
Well, I want to talk to Ben anyway. So I don't mind going and because it's on my way. If I go through town, I can go get it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking, if no one could do it, I am going to be.
If I need somebody to deliver it, after I pick it up, I'll get it. If I don't, I'll just drop it off myself.
Okay. Well, anyways, we could ask Christina because she's working and doesn't mind doing those things. So I was thinking that the funeral's in the morning. I could pick it up at 11:30, but then it'd be driving back west. So I was trying to.
Yeah, I don't mind doing it because I'll probably take a walk at Owen Park. So, but if it works, if it's convenient for me to drop it off in the in-between time, I'll do it at 2-ish. If not, I'll either do it or drop it off for somebody to do it at 5.
Okay. And Francie, Chris dropped something off today at Francie's. So
okay.
She needed a candle. And so,
okay.
And I had one at the office, but I thought it's really dumb for me to drive there. Francie lives close to the office, so.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the time so much because her husband can also, it's just coming to the door. I wouldn't do it at between noon and 1:30 because that's the actual funeral. But it's just so sad to me, Paul. Like, here's someone who takes care of everybody else and she can't go to her own sister's funeral. It's just like horrible. Yeah. I hate it.
So does this sister live out in California?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And does she have one sister here in town?
I don't think she has a sister here, but I think she might be one of 4. But this was her sister who's only a year younger than her. So they were like twins growing up. So yeah, it's pretty, she's pretty sad.
Yeah.
So Anyways, okay, I'm gonna go get more tea before my 4:45.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking that on. I
Yeah.
don't know, my week just got so busy and
Oh, no problem. And that was, I really enjoyed it today, and everybody seemed to be very into it. So it was nice.
yeah, thank you. And I'm gonna, if I email the women earlier, more of them will come, I think so. Okay, thanks, Paul.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.